I think I'm on Zoom.
You're on Zoom with me, but
Yeah.
I'm also working to get us up on Facebook so that
Okay.
it will be both places. But you're with me in Zoom. You're right.
Okay. I'm glad Rachel sent me the notice, the
Right.
receipt. So,
Yeah, no, she said I knew she was doing it in the service. That's why I didn't do it, because I knew she was doing it.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are actually on Facebook now as well. So we will get started in just a little bit. I have a story that it's a little different version than I've done of the story before, but I've known the story a long time. And so some storytellers added another sort of dimension to it. So it'll be a nice one, I think, to share.
Good. Good.
And it's been a nice day today, right, for Shabbat?
Yes.
Today was the day for catching up on sleep.
Well, that's a good thing too.
It was a good day for sleeping. Every
Good.
time I sat down to read the paper or read something, I dozed off. So I'm all caught up on sleep, hopefully.
That's good.
Hope-
That's good. We took a couple nice walks, but mostly I've been on the phone all day making get out the vote calls. But it was a nice day. Talked to a lot of nice people, so that's good.
Good.
Everything's
good.
good. And we walked and we got ice cream. We treated ourselves when we went and walked and got ice cream. So that was
Okay. Sugar lips?
yes. Which we only do that like maybe 2 or 3 times the whole summer because I think it's expensive. But it was a nice treat on a hot day.
We used to go after ritual committee meetings.
Yeah.
And so that after the meeting, that was often where we would go, was to Sugar Lips. But needless to say, we meet remotely now, so that isn't going to happen the same.
Nope. That's
Holly,
right.
we started watching that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I am devastated. I really.
Which one?
As They See Us, the Netflix series, the Ava DuVernay about the Central Park Five. It's a 4-part series.
Right. Okay.
So we're not meeting this week tomorrow because
Right.
I'm busy and it's on for Father's Day. So I figured it's 4 parts and that'll give people 2 weeks to watch it. So
Okay.
it's very, and you've probably seen it, but it's very powerful. Did you see it, Rabbi Barbara?
I didn't. I knew all about it, but I hadn't seen it. So who put it out?
Ava DuVernay. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix.
Okay. Okay.
It's a made-for-television movie, but it's just
Right.
very powerful and well done.
Okay.
Oh, and does the temple still have Havdalah candles? Because this one
Yes.
maybe we'll take it tonight, so we'll have to come down. Is there anybody there we could get one from during the week?
Yeah, Wednesday and Thursday, we have an administrative assistant in the office.
Okay.
So between 10 and 2 are the official hours, so we can get you another Havdalah candle.
Okay, good, because this one may make it tonight. We'll see. It's very short.
Yeah, I have a fan on, but not blowing this way, and I don't have the air conditioning on, so the candles should not go all over the place. My Shabbat candles burn very strangely when it's this time of year with the fan and the air conditioning.
Yeah. Hi, Rabbi Rachel.
You're muted still.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm unmuted now.
I thought of you when I was able to see my mother outside of her nursing home with plexiglass between us, and thinking of you, Rachel, as well with your mom, that maybe they'll be able to get to that point to do that.
They did something at the nursing home because they sent a letter updating everybody every week that they had a couple of people performing music out in the parking lot. I don't know how many people could hear or if they got them somewhere so that they could, because there is like a porch on each floor. So and asking my mother, she probably wouldn't remember if she did it, but it was nice that they had something.
We took a page from your book, Rachel, and we bought Barks root beer floats frozen.
They are wonderful.
I was trying in the chat on Wednesday to get everybody to say what their favorite ice cream was, and she always said, oh, she forgot, because I had told her that, because I figured just because we can't have an in-house one doesn't mean that we still couldn't have ice cream. I mean,
Right.
I think there were about 6 people who were eating ice cream at some point during the meeting.
Rachel,
Yeah.
I was thinking of something for the reporter. I would like you to show you some of the poetry that I wrote many years ago. How can I get it to you?
We made a rule that we do not publish poetry. It's a rule that's from before I was there, because there's a lot of people who write poetry and nobody wants to be the one that decides what goes in and what doesn't go in.
Well,
So
you published one of mine on the front page,
well,
How I Met My Spouse years ago.
if people give us something, like somebody won a prize for her poem, one of the grade school kids did, then we put something in. It's also the same thing that this policy started with Rebecca, which is if someone locally publishes a book, I do not review it. We do an interview of the person, because I have to be able to say in a review whether or not I really like something or not. So that becomes uncomfortable. So we're willing to give people publicity and interview them, but it's not going to be a review.
That's why I wanted to show it to you.
Well, we'll have to figure out a different route for you. How's that, Sylvia, for what to do with your poetry?
Well, I used to write quite a bit, and I haven't written since my first husband died. This year for Father's Day, I couldn't find appropriate Father's Day cards for my son and sons-in-law, so I wrote it in rhyme. I don't know if they got it yet, but I used to do it a lot, but I haven't done it recently.
Sylvia,
Yes.
why don't you send it to me for the Sisterhood newsletter?
It's a
That's
whole
great.
book,
Great
and I
idea.
would like to show it to you.
Well, that might be a little bit difficult, but we'll figure that out.
Okay. I know the one that was printed in the Reporter, had to be 20 years ago or so, was How I Met My Spouse. But I have another one, and I ended it with a future doctor, she will be my blue-eyed daughter of 23. That's a pretty long one. And then I wrote about my dog who had puppies, and I got a dog from the dog pound, and she gave birth to 10 puppies in my living room on the rug. And my children were like 10 or 11 at that time, and they saw the birth, so it was very interesting. And I wrote about that.
Well, it's great to find ways to find expression and ways to put things down, and whatever forms it is. What were you going to say, Holly?
Oh, we're just saying hello to the Nymans.
Oh, okay.
Hi. How you
The hot and
doing?
sweaty Nymans.
Yeah. We just packed up our outside garage sale, yard sale. We had a bunch of free stuff, but nobody seemed to want to take that either. So yeah. We did get maybe an offer on the house though. That's pretty cool. We
Yeah.
market. Our neighbors across the road, they have a son and daughter that live in Maryland that are looking for a house here. So in the Baltimore area. So you can imagine what price this house costing here would be like, oh my God, to them, so yeah.
Right.
We'll see.
Great.
Yeah, so I say scary.
Well, it's just after 7, and we are on Facebook Live, and we are here on Zoom. So I want to get started with the story so then we can make Havdalah. So the story that I wanted to share, I only know it by one name, but I know more than one version of the story, or I have known more than one version of the story. So the story is called The Scratch in the Ruby. And other people already are familiar with the story as well, maybe, but this adds a different, some other pieces to the ending of it as well. So I've used the story quite a number of years ago. I've used it in sermons before. And it was told through on the URJ through Stories We Tell a few years ago. The first time it was told was by Jerry Kay, who is a friend of mine who was the director of the camp that I went to in Owen St. Ruby Union Institute camp. He was director there for 48 years, but he was only there my last few years. I was with several other camp directors before he was there as well. And his daughter, Rabbi Leora Kay, is also, they're both gifted storytellers, and she is the person in charge of all of the stories we tell for the union and is in charge of programming at the URJ. So when I found their version of the story, I thought, okay, because it's pretty close to what I have had, a little different, but pretty much the same. And if you've heard it before, yeah, I think you'll appreciate it, and you'll appreciate the addition they added to it as well. So as you can imagine, every king, every person chooses to celebrate their birthday in their own special way. And this is a story about just one of those. So this king always sponsored a lavish party for his birthday, and he invited everyone in the kingdom to the party, and everyone came because they knew it was going to be a remarkable event. And what was so different, well, here's what happened. On this day, the king would bring out a special box that he kept hidden away, and he would bring it to the front of the castle, and he would bring it in front of everyone there and slowly open the lid of the box, and inside the box, he would take out a ruby of such magnificent color that everyone was left aghast. And every person in the room saw this, and as much as they smiled, the king smiled with them. So then came that horrible day, a day when the party was held and the decorations were out and the food was prepared and all of the things that always happened at the king's birthday were right and in order, except when the king opened the box. It wasn't the same beautiful ruby. It was now a ruby with a scratch right down across the face of it. A scratch that took away much of the beauty, and it took away that sense of it being something special. And so the king's smile all at once turned to a frown. And it stayed that way. He called out to everyone in the community, everyone to see, and said, someone make it better. And if they can fix it and make it better, he will reward them mightily. So people came from everywhere. They were lapidaries, a fancy word for jewelers, people who came who had all kinds of abilities to erase those scratches on jewels, but nothing changed. Nothing made a difference. And there were people who came from other towns and other cities, from other countries, all to try to do the work. Nobody knew how it happened, and nobody knew what had caused the scratch, but everyone knew that the scratch was there. So the king was getting in more and more distress and sad, each day looking less happy. And each day another person came to try to take out the scratch, and another person failed. But one day, it was a little girl. And she came and said, "Your Majesty, I would love to help you, to try to help you. I would love to try to remove the scratch from the face of the ruby." And the king looked at her and he said, "You know, my child, you're a sweet young girl, and I'm sure you have only the best of intentions, but even with all of your intentions and even all of your work, nobody's been able to do a single thing to change the face of the ruby. How do you think you can do it? But do it, try, and see what you can do, because you certainly can't make it worse." "So what is it that you want for your work?" The girl said, "All I want is to be left alone in a private room with food each day. Not much, just enough to provide me with nourishment and something to drink with it." And the king said, "It will be yours." And days passed, and people were standing outside now, anxious and waiting, wondering what would happen. The news was going to go through the countryside so quickly that any change would make a difference. So a day finally came when the girl knocked on the door, and they opened the door, and she held the box. And she brought the box to the king, And she said, Your Majesty, I hope you will find this to your liking. He said, well, it certainly can't be worse. And he took the box and he gathered everyone around to share with them what it was that this little girl had done to make it look different. And the king sat there and he slowly opened the box. And his face started to change from sad and disappointed, and maybe even a miserable look, to something that looked like an expression of joy. Why? Not because the scratch was gone. The scratch was still there. The king was able to see that the little girl, what she did was she was to take that scratch and she turned it into a rose. And there's a lesson for each of us here, that each one of us has a scratch of some kind in our bodies and in our hearts, in our minds. But that scratch with the right concern and the right commitment and the right devotion can become not just a scratch every day, but rather a bit of beauty that remains in our hearts. So that's the story about the scratch on the stone that's turned into a rose. And you can just think of that scratch as being the stem of the rose and the etching of it on there. But there's another part to the story that after the girl had left the palace, the king realized that he had some questions he wanted to ask her. In what ways had she thought about coming to present her ideas to him? Had she wondered whether or not it would work? Had it kept her up all night like it had the king? So he decided he would seek her out and he would find out where she lived. So he asked around and people shared with him that she lived just a little bit outside, just beyond the border. Not here, not there, not in a fancy part of town, not in a poor part of town. And he found the way to her house where she lived with her family. And when he got there, it became clear that nobody was home. So he figured he would just wait for a little bit until they arrived, and then he would walk up to the house. He would, of course, knock on the door and see if she might be open to a bit more conversation. But as he waited, he realized there was something specific about this house where she lived. Something specific about all the solid surfaces of the dwelling. What he noticed was that on just about every single surface, a rose had been carved. Some were half done, some fully done, some beautiful, some clearly with mistakes in them. And it was up and down the walls of the house. It was all up and down the fence that surrounded the house. It was even on the shed where they clearly kept the tools. There was not a single space, it seemed, in the area where she had lived that didn't have a rose carved on it. So just as he was noticing all the carvings, the young girl herself walked up and she saw the king and she was so pleased to see him. And she said, well, what is it that you're doing here? I was just with you in your home yesterday and now you've shown up on my doorstep. He said to her, after you left, I realized I did have a few questions for you, if you'd be open to answering them. But now that I've arrived here, well, I realize I only have one. Just a moment. She looked around and she knew what it was he was going to ask her. He said to her, why is it that the rose you carved into my ruby is carved into almost every single space where you live? And she said to him, Your Majesty, when the scratch appeared on your ruby, we all in your entire kingdom felt so sad for you, and we all wanted, every single one of us, we wanted to do something to make it perfect again. And we each tried to think of what our own gifts might be that might be able to bring it back to its original state of perfection. And I knew that the one thing I could do was carve. But Your Majesty, I started thinking about this, well, perhaps over a year ago, even when it first happened, but I didn't come to you right away when I thought of the idea. I realized I wanted to make sure that I could do it perfectly. That if it was meant I was going to have one chance to do this, I wanted to be sure to be able to try to make it better. I certainly didn't want to make a mistake doing it, so I practiced during the year. And I practiced on the walls, and I practiced on paper, and I practiced on rocks, and I practiced on essentially everything I could get my hands on. Anything that I could carve at least, because I wanted to be sure that if I was going to try to fix that ruby, I was going to do it well. I wanted to make sure that if I was going to take something of such value to somebody else into my own hands, I was going to do it with as much care as I could. The king looked at her and said, "Thank you." In fact, that is really all I needed or wanted to know. And he looked at her again and he said, "If only every one of us could give that much care to all of the people with whom we contact and we interact, to all of the people that come across our paths, and ours, theirs, if only." So we have two different ways to think about this story. So I offer for you to think about how often you pay attention to the people that you care about, to the people that you want to take care of, and whether or not you make sure to practice that much so that when you hold them and the things that they care about in your hands, you do so with the utmost of attention. So that's the story of the scratch on the ruby and the rose that it's turned into. So we often say sometimes the things that are the imperfections, really, if we look at them a different way, we can find beauty in them in other ways. And this is, I think, a beautiful story to illustrate that. Any comments, any thoughts?
I feel like clapping.
Oh, and you have roses right there. How
Yes.
great, Lainey.
I've heard a different version of the story. King with a diamond, and his son grabs it, it's a diamond ring, and grabs it. And instead of a young girl, it's nobody else can do it, and it's a jeweler who comes. I guess some of that one is the idea that they say that even if you have something in your life that seems broken, and the way this story's moral is more like if you have something that seems broken, you can make something beautiful out of it. I mean, it's very similar, but just a little bit of a different emphasis on how that goes.
The scratch on the gem, because the other versions I knew, it wasn't a ring, it was a gem, I believe, and they had the scratch on it. The idea that it's carved, then yours was a diamond and this was a ruby. But the fact from the scratch, it gets carved to be a rose on it.
Well, this actually turned, this was interesting because that wasn't what I was expecting. That they did is it similar, but they turned the scratch into the stem of the rose.
Right. That's the one I knew it was the stem. I knew it was the stem of the rose as well. So you think of the stem, and so now instead of the scratch across it, it's the stem of the rose, and there's the rose there as well. Yeah.
It works either way.
Yeah. So there are, there's so many classic tales that have different versions, and we don't just have to take them in one way because storytellers tell them in all different ways. And I'm not even sure if we know the original source of the story. I could not find an original source yet, but it's one of those that are told in many, many different versions, many different places. So those are the keepers, I think. And in the stories the versions I knew, they didn't know how the scratch appeared. So the one you knew, Rachel, it was that the son had dropped it, but that I hadn't heard that piece of it.
Yeah, because the son took it and wanted it. It sounds interesting because I've done with reading different things too, of finding the same sort of story with a lot of different variations, and they all have something extra that they give because of the little bit that gets changed or the little kind of emphasis that it has with it. So sometimes it's fun to read like 2 or 3 versions of the same thing and see what each of the tellers are doing with it.
Yeah, so some I found are just folklore. I couldn't find like any citation for them because I was looking at a number of stories today. So when I do the research on stories, I look at a bunch and then I will have them for other times as well. So it's always interesting when some of them are stories that I've used a lot before and then find a very different variation of it. So I don't know. I'll have to think about which is the variation I want to use this time around when I tell them the next time. So we are going to move to Havdalah. And we do have more Havdalah candles. So if any of you need Havdalah candles, let me know. But there is somebody in the building on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So if you come to the door, we can help you with that. And I know where they are. So I will make sure that she knows as well. Okay, I got everything in front of me for this Havdalah. Let's see here. I left the candle last week with my son, so he now has a Havdalah candle in his house too. Okay, I am going to mute you for the first part, and then I will unmute you at the end for Shavuot Tov. And you can unmute yourself if you need to along the way if you would like to. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei minei v'samim Borei minei v'samim Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei me'orei ha'esh borei me'orei ha'esh ya la 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 ya la 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 Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. המבדיל בין קודש לחול, בין אור לחושך, בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. We take a sip of our wine or juice, and then put the candle out, and then we're going to sing Eliyahu Hanavi. I hope you could hear the sizzle. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hakiladi, Bimera V'Yaminu Yavo Eleinu. Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hakiladi. You want to unmute yourselves? We'll then sing Shavua Tov for a good week, to wish everyone a good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Shavua Tov,
Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov,
Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, a good week, a week of may gladness reign and joy increase. Good week, a week of rain and joy increase. When we do this together, whoever starts first becomes the leader and we all follow from there, but we really are all doing it together in our different way, and that way we do get to hear one another's voice and we all get to sing together. So I do wish you a Shavua Tov, a good week. Happy Father's Day to those to whom it applies, and enjoy, I think, good weather, summer. We finally made it to summer.
Oh, my
Someone
goodness.
posted we've had the COVID-19 pandemic and all these things now for 3 seasons,
Mhm.
because it started in the winter and now it's into summer.
Wow.
Wow.
So we sprang forward and we got to summer.
That's right. That's right. Have a good week, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua
Bye-bye.
Tov.
Bye-bye.
Bye.